Namo Krishna Padaya Krishna Krishna Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vacharane Nirishesha Srimardani Sastras. I think it should be a little lower. It seems like we're getting feedback. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. That seems pretty good then.
Yeah. That's not.
Still good? Not quite as good. Okay. Good? Yes. We got different descriptions of what to talk about. Not very different, but a little different. I'm going to talk about giving Srimad Bhagavatam classes. I have in mind a very simple guideline, a set of guidelines to keep in mind. First guideline is don't leave your notes back where you're staying. So since I did that today, my phone was coming and he lost me also. But first thing is the background of your class. The background consists of strictly following 4 regulative principles, chanting 16 rounds a day, keeping strong sadhana, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, the Kantil. That will give us spiritual standing, spiritual strength, give us plenty to talk about, and we'll be properly qualified. So that's the first thing. The next thing is that we should say something bona fide. To give the Bhagavatam class imposes on us duties. It's not just a privilege or an opportunity, but we have a weighty duty to perform. There's Kantil in there. We have a duty to perform. Our duty is to present the message that we've received from previous acharyas, from our spiritual master, from the Sastras. That's our job. That's our job. That's our duty. That's what we're here for. Just to, as Prabhupada often said, we're postal peons. Just low-paid workers, clerks, practically. Our job is to come in and do the work. And the work is to present the message that we've received. We received a message for you. Here's the message. Without adding or subtracting or changing. Just to present the authentic message. That's our job. We're meant to serve as representatives of Vyas. That's why the asana is called Vyas asana. We're meant to represent Vyasadeva and his message as received through the Parampara system. With that in mind, we should know the siddhantas, the conclusions of Krishna consciousness. We may not have photographic memories and remember every verse in the book and know all sorts of technical details and categories and so on. But we have certain conclusions, siddhantas, which are, front and center, which are central to our teachings. And we should know them, and we should teach them. That's what Prabhupada said at one time about the Back to God, and he said the editors should know the siddhantas, the conclusions. And we should say, oh, good. I know this. So far, so good. In the class, we should follow the standard format that Prabhupada taught us, Bhagavatam class especially. The format is well known. We have kirtan, we chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and the Sanskrit verse, word for word meanings, translation, purport. For the Sanskrit, if you haven't already, read the pronunciation guide. I think that's now required reading in Mayapur. I'm not no longer Mayapur Academy, should be anyway. There's a terrible number of devotees who've never read the pronunciation guide that we include in each book. And it's great, it tells you how to pronounce at least the Sanskrit. Bengali is an adventure because the orthography, the letters don't necessarily match the sounds. But in Sanskrit, every letter always matches a letter in the target language. Every Roman letter matches a letter in the Sanskrit alphabet. And that's what those little marks are there for, diacritical marks. They tell us which specific letter is being represented. And in the pronunciation guide, you'll find the code. I recommend for those who haven't read it, the pronunciation guide in my book, Vanity Karma. I've tried to, because the one in most of our books gets very technical, the Pavargas, Kavargas, Pavargas, and so on. It's all laid out scientifically, very good to know, but by the end of it, you may not know how to pronounce the letters. So in my book, I just started again and made a page and a half summary of how you pronounce those different sounds. So it's worth the time and investment. You'll seem like you know what you're doing, because you will know what you're doing, instead of fumbling your way through a Sanskrit alphabet you've never really taken the trouble to learn. It doesn't take much time, but it's worth learning. If we can learn the meters, that will help us. There's really only 2 or 3 or 4 that are the most commonly used, and if we learn them, that will help us. If we learn the more esoteric or less common meters, great, but at least the most common ones we should know. There are some sources for those. I've seen Dravida Prabhu had a collection, that you might have seen. Anyway, you can find it, how to deal with these Sanskrit meters. Worth knowing. Don't bluff the Sanskrit. Go slow if you have to, but try to do it right. There's no need, by the way, to recite the English translations responsibly. No law against it, I suppose. Prabhupada didn't, and there's no law that you have to. It always reminds me of PS 152. For non-Americans, that's public school 152, which means whatever public school you went to. And we all said, oh, look, see sponge. No harm, but Prabhupada didn't do the Sanskrit that way. The English translation that way, and you don't have to. These are just some practical things, not shastric. My personal recommendations: read the English slowly. When you're reading, and I'll give you an example of what I mean. This is just the verse that I'm dealing with, and it's the next verse in my online class. Sri Bhrigu said, "My dear Lord, all living entities beginning from the highest, namely Lord Brahma, down to the ordinary ant, are under the influence of the insurmountable spell of illusory energy, and thus they are ignorant of their constitutional position. Everyone believes in the concept of the body, and all are thus submerged in the darkness of illusion. They are actually unable to understand how you live in every living entity as the supersoul, nor can they understand your absolute position. But you are the eternal friend and protector of all surrendered souls. Therefore, please be kind toward us and forgive all our offenses." That's today's verse. Now, try it this way. Sri Bhrigu said, "My dear Lord, all living entities, beginning from the highest, namely Lord Brahma, down to the ordinary ant, are under the influence of the insurmountable spell of illusory energy, and thus they are ignorant of their constitutional position. Everyone believes in the concept of the body, and all are thus submerged in the darkness of illusion. They're actually unable to understand how you live, every living entity, as the supersoul, nor can they understand your absolute position. But you are the eternal friend and protector of all surrendered souls. Therefore, please be kind to us and forgive all our offenses." So I wish that you understand better. The second one. And there was no drama there. I didn't bring in any forensic skills, nothing fancy, nothing where people would go, wow, wow, it sounded just like Bhrigu Muni. All I really did was read slowly, stop at the points where things went together, grouped things together, stopped or went slowly, so that, because it takes time to register. When we speak all together, everything, boom, 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 one thing after another, people are just trying, first of all, to hear. Usually our acoustics are lousy. In so many of our temple rooms, terrible acoustics. Or we're speaking with an accent, I'm American, everyone's trying to figure out my American accent, and they're just decoding what I'm saying, just what words are they? Even if you're from South India, the North Indians are trying to figure out what you're saying. So I have two tasks. First, to receive what was said and just understand what words they are. And then I have to get what they mean. And perhaps a little something of how they might strike me, what thoughts I might have. So that takes time. And if you don't give people time, I don't know what everyone does, but what I do is I shut off. I stop listening. I give up. And I start thinking about what I'm going to do later in the day or whatever else it is. So if you just go slowly, not so slowly, but it will make a huge difference. That goes for the translation and the purport. And usually we think that we're going too slowly. When we do that, we think, no, I'm going too slowly. And it's not so. It's not slow. Until the whole temple is talking about how slowly you speak. Till then, it's fine. We usually feel like I'm but that time is needed. Okay, 20 minutes. Next point, before we speak, we should offer obeisances to our spiritual master. That is the tradition. Yam praprajanta manapeta peja krityantvaitayano viraka. Yes, the Sutta Goswami is beginning to speak. First offers his obeisances to his spiritual master. By that I mean your spiritual master. I don't mean Prabhupada. Your spiritual master. Otherwise you're jumping. You're giving the class on Namo Vishnu Padaya, Vishnu Krishna Preshnaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta. What happened to your Guru Maharaj? Where are you in the disciplic succession that you just jumped over to Prabhupada? If you want to offer obeisances to Prabhupada, very good. It's probably almost a requirement in this gun, and it's certainly good. But if you jump over your spiritual master, you're lapsing from the standard protocol and perhaps committing an offense. And last part about the way we do it is you can read the purport all in one go, or you can break it up into sections. And comment as you go along. All right, I'll take questions on what I've said so far. Any questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for those very nice instructions. I had one question about reciting our spiritual master's Brahman prayers to the spiritual master during the class. So should we do that audibly or?
Audibly, why not? What is this? What kind of society are we in that you can't offer obeisances to your spiritual master in public? What is this? It's not like Sutta Goswami. He said it loud enough so that it could be recorded in Srimad Bhagavatam. What is this nonsense idea that I shouldn't offer respects to my spiritual master audibly before I give the class? Unless we're crypto Ritviks, we should. Yes, same question. Yes, it's not like you hide your spiritual master. You know, oh my God, I have a spiritual master. Nobody should.
That's what is officially taught in ISKCON disciples.
Excuse me?
Yes.
That's what is officially taught in ISKCON disciples course.
In the official ISKCON disciples course is taught that you should offer obeisances to your spiritual master inaudibly.
Yes.
Well, in my personal opinion, that's rubbish. Just
And the context to that is this is that people start using Vyasasana as a platform to promote their spiritual master.
fine. That far you can use it. It doesn't mean for the next hour and a half I'm going to talk about the giant, the glories of my Guru Maharaj. But, are we so skittish that once somebody offers obeisances to his Guru Maharaj, now he's promoting something, and we have to be careful lest, something slip out. I have a rule. I'm sorry. They should let them come talk to me. But as far as I can see, maybe there's something I'm missing. But as far as I can tell, it's rubbish. That's why anyone who wants to become my disciple has to wait 15 years. And if he's taken disciples course, he has to wait 25.
Maharaj, what about devotees who are not initiated or who are aspiring, so they can take their spiritual master's name whom he's aspiring from, or what do you suggest?
I don't have a suggestion. I could suggest something, but sort of on the spot, I'd suggest something, but I'd have to think about it. And it would only be my opinion. That you should chant Prabhupada's mantra, or you should chant who he's aspiring from, or you should just chant Om Jnana, Tamiram Dasya, whatever I might say would just really be my opinion. I never heard anything from Prabhupada about it. I haven't seen anything in Shastra about it. It would just be my personal recommendation. And I don't think I want to make a personal recommendation. But if you are initiated, then I'm speaking from what the tradition tells us. It's a requirement that before you speak, you offer, informally speaking, not before I say hello, but before we deliver a class, or before we start a kirtan, for that matter, you'll find that discussed in my book. We offer respects to our spiritual master. Not just to the founder, not only to the founder-Acharya of ISKCON, but to our personal spiritual master, which according to the tradition is something that we're supposed to have. And he's a person we're supposed to respect because he's the person who's connected us to the Sampradaya. So the spiritual master should not be minimized. He should not be dropped out of sight. He should not be hidden. He should not be replaced by an official body of some sort or anything else. We should offer, this is controversial, before I speak, I should offer obeisances to my spiritual master. Is that something like he's unsure about? Yes.
There's besides what was mentioned that you don't want to use the Vyasasana as a platform, there's a verse to the effect that one's mantra, one's Ishtadeva, and one's spiritual master should be kept.
There may be, there's a verse that our mantra, our Ishtadeva, and so on. So we're not going to tell people that who our guru is. We're not going to tell people that we're chanting the Maha Mantra. We're not going to tell them we're worshiping Krishna.
I suppose that dispels that verse.
That verse has context and so on, but certainly the context is not that. We listen, of course, to the shortened versions, the edited versions of Prabhupada's lectures that were meant to fit on a cassette of a certain length. But every lecture Prabhupada gave, every one I've ever heard, first he begins by offering obeisances to his spiritual master by name. You'll find the quote on that in my book also. By name. Sutta Goswami. Same thing. He that is not generic about spiritual mastery. Offers obeisances specifically to Shukadeva Goswami. Not that we have to hide our spiritual master.
This is while we are attending the class. If I don't like a particular speaker due to whatever reason, or if I'm not enjoying a particular class, I'm not connecting to it, is that how would you see that to selectively come for class and selectively choose to opt out of the class?
The class is not for our enjoyment.
Yeah, maybe not the enjoyment is the wrong word, but not connecting at all.
Not connecting this. The trouble is we start becoming selective, and then pretty soon we've selected out everything. Prabhupada, our standard is that we attend the daily class. If something's really wrong, well, that's different. You go to the authorities and say, this person is speaking Mayapur philosophy or what have you. But if they're speaking Krishna Katha, we should be content. Let me sit and hear. Because our program is Nityam Bhagavata Swami. Every day I'll attend the class. Prabhupada wrote a letter to Gopi Chandra Vallabha Prabhu, the temple president of ISKCON Brooklyn at the time in New York, and said that I'm paraphrasing, that here in Vrindavan, every day I'm sitting and listening to the devotees speak. Similarly, you should also do. Don't try to be a better person than your guru. So we should sit in here. Sometimes I may be a wonderful speaker, sometimes a neophyte, right? We'll listen to the neophyte speaker. That's all right also. Nowadays, of course, everybody's got 40 choices online, and that's another story altogether. But our basic principle is that every day we should hear. I don't want to go too far afield from my stated topic. So, now to the purport. When we speak, we should remember whom it is that we're representing. We're representing a strong tradition, a honorable tradition. And so the class imposes upon us the duty to present things as they are. Quote, study my books and reproduce the purports in your own language. You should instruct your temple presidents to preach like this. This is preaching. We haven't got to invent something by our fertile brain for preaching. Everything is there. One who is expert for presenting these things before the audience so they can conveniently understand. This is a successful preacher. You have only to speak what Krishna has said, then you become a preacher. Leonard Jagadish, November 9th, 1905. Simple thing. Just repeat what you've heard. But Prabhupada specifies in your own language. Prabhupada said that's the sign of realization. Realization means you've understood the thing in such a way that you can explain it to others in your own words. Otherwise, you may be able to repeat like a parrot, but you may not have understood what you're repeating. But if you can explain it in your own words in the same way, so that the same meaning comes across, that means you have realization. Prabhupada said that about the Bhaktivedanta articles, that if they're tedious, it means they've not assimilated. They haven't realized it. Realization in this context doesn't mean something great and mystical. It just means you've understood it. If you've understood something about how give me something. If you've understood how a steam engine works, you may be a great engineer, but if you can't explain it, but even if you explain to me how a steam engine works, and if I've understood it, I can tell you in my own language. I don't have to repeat what I read in the book. So repeating, keeping the same substance, not changing the meaning, but in your own words, explaining it, Prabhupada says, conveniently, so that people can understand. Making it intelligible. That's what a teacher does. Teacher doesn't reinvent the alphabet, reinvent grammar. Teacher just explains it in such a way that even I can understand. Clear? Okay, so don't concoct or invent anything. Just repeat what the authorities have said. The process of speaking in spiritual circles is to say something upheld by authority. One should at once quote from scriptural authority to back up what he's saying. Say something upheld by authorities. Just repeat. I remember there was an incident, there was a Rath Yatra in San Francisco. It was the only big Rath Yatra in North America at the time. and Prabhupada was scheduled to speak, and the devotees had invited two local politicians to speak beforehand, as we often do here in India. So, two politicians spoke. First one spoke. It was basically, we're so glad to have diversity in our city and re-elect me. And the other man had done his homework a little more and spoke about diversity in our city and Bhagavad Gita and Krishna, a few words. And it was also understood that we should re-elect him. And then it was Prabhupada's turn to speak. And I was watching carefully. I wanted to hear how Prabhupada would, respond to their points, how he might particularly respond to the man who spoken from Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada began. So I've given the example many times that just as the hand has to give food to the stomach, so we have to give our service to the Supreme Personality. And Prabhupada kept going, not a word about that. Ignored them entirely and just repeated the same message that he'd customarily given. Now, I'm not saying from this that ignore whoever came before you, don't acknowledge their presence. But I just need to say that Prabhupada consistently delivered the message that had come. That was his business. And that's our business. Next point, no need to compromise or pussyfoot. Are you familiar with the word pussyfoot? No. Pussyfoot. A pussy is a cat, a little cat. A pet cat. And to pussyfoot means to walk very, very gently the way a little pussy cat would walk. So to pussyfoot means to be ever so careful that you don't say anything that people might not like. That's called pussyfoot. Everything is so nice and gentle that no one will feel anything that they might not feel good about or might not disagree with. That's called pussyfooting. It's also called compromising. Prabhupada told Giriraj Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj never compromised. I never compromised, nor should any of my disciples ever compromise. So that doesn't mean you have to be consistently blunt and rude. And there may be occasions where tact is called for. But it's not our business to get up there and delete all the things that people might feel uncomfortable about and sort of not comment on them or let them go by the wayside. Because Prabhupada's right, he writes strongly. He has a strong message. He speaks strongly. I remember, my time is not too long, but Prabhupada one time when one gentleman was expressing some dismay over some of the strong words that Prabhupada used about respected spiritual teachers. Prabhupada unpacked the Mam Duskritana Muta Prapadyante Narad. He explained each word and then said, it's not my saying, it's Krishna's saying. What can I do? So where Krishna is strong, our business is to give the same strong message, not to water it down or make it palatable for the world. In general, I would suggest sticking to the verse. Prabhupada's usual way of giving a class was that he would just unpack one word after another. He would speak for hours that way. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he explained the Atmarama verse, just each word has so many meanings, and that's how he explained the verse. Prabhupada typically gave class that way. If you listen to class after class, he's taking apart the verse. Now, that's not to say that that's all you can do. And Prabhupada sometimes picks out one theme from the verse or one word from the verse, and that's the whole class. I remember he gave one class in New York, and he began, Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyanan Vedasya Ajnana Timirandasya. And that was, that was what he spoke about for the class. Whatever the verse was, I forget, but I remember that was what he placed emphasis on. So it's not that you're confined and you can't speak beyond the four corners of the page. But a successful, one successful formula for giving a class, just repeat what's there. Just this word means this word means this, what they suggest, where you might find the same word elsewhere, and that leads you to another verse, which you can then do the same thing with. And you can go and go without having to invent things or do things like, in the latest issue of Time magazine, there was an article on blah, blah. Oh gosh, save me. We don't have to be so obsessed with relevance that we sit on the Vyasasana and talk about the latest news. That's usually a sign that we've been reading Time when the time might have better been invested in reading Bhagavatam. Not to say that nothing can be mentioned, but in general, our job is not to get up there and read the daily news. We should stick to our level of realization in Bhagavatam, Yatat Hitam Yatamiti. The Sutta Goswami says, I'll speak as far as my realization allows. We should also avoid using the class for elevated, intimate topics that are beyond our level of qualification or the level of qualification of the audience. It's not that we can never mention the gopis, that Srimati Radharani is off limits for discussion, but if we hear Srila Prabhupada's classes, then we'll get a clear idea of what the main substance should be of what we discuss. And it's not, generally speaking, Ujjwala Nilamani and upper topics. Any questions so far on? Yes.
First is, how should we approach verses which there are verses like in especially in Chaitanya where Prabhupada does not give any profit. So, I'm asked to give a class on a verse doesn't have purport. So, what is the best?
What to do when a verse has, purport? Sometimes we hear that we shouldn't speak on a verse unless Prabhupada's commented on it. But I don't know of any rule like that. I don't know of any rule like that. The verse, generally, what I see done is that we go till the next place where there is a comment, because generally Prabhupada comments where there's something to be said. But there may be some reason to comment on a particular verse. You're in the birthplace of Udaran Das Thakur, and verses about Udaran Das Thakur, and there's no purport. Oh, I can't speak to them. Or there may be some particular point you want to bring out, or you may just have something brief to say about the verse. 2, 3 words, 10 words, 3 sentences. I don't know whether you can rule or no, we can't come. Now, we sometimes hear that the acharyas, if the previous acharyas have not commented on some verse, they don't write a commentary. But sometimes again, we find that they do, and I don't know that that extends to classes. Is that the only kind of question?
Yeah, and another one is, it's like this, the same thing. The verse might have very small purport, and general idea, as I gather, is like, don't go beyond the scope of that. So if you don't go beyond the scope of that and don't go beyond your realization, what you're going to speak might be.
If there's a small purport and you don't go beyond the scope of the purport, and our realization is not that great, then now what do we do?
No, not exactly that. I see you as an example. Your class doesn't go beyond 30-35 minutes. Your general class does not.
My classes generally don't go beyond 25 minutes.
Yeah.
It's about as much as I can manage. Yeah.
No, like I find that as a role model. So
Well, there's no, I don't know of a time restriction. That, you know, you can't go beyond 25 minutes. You can't go beyond 40 minutes. I don't have any rule to present to you about that. I sometimes speak longer, Prabhupada sometimes speak longer, so I don't know. But in general, my prejudice is that we should respect the time limit given for the class. If the class is an hour, and then we say, okay, we go for an hour, and then we call for questions. Now we're essentially, what's the word? Well, we're certainly disregarding the schedule. And we're also not considering what that means for others. Now, I don't want to go too far because I know there are people I respect very much who always go beyond the, and there are people who really they shouldn't have any restrictions on them because what they have to say is so valuable. But for the rest of us, the little guys, and for me, in general, I have to think that people have a schedule. They have other duties. They have things that they want to do or are supposed to do. And their whole life is not all about hearing from me. And so I try to end classes reasonably on time. You know, you go 5 minutes over, 10 minutes over. Sometimes you're really in the middle of something very important and you go on a little bit. But as a general rule, we should try to respect people's time as reflected in the schedule. Which means if you're going to call for questions, leave enough time for the questions. Otherwise, you also risk, apart from you risk having people hate you. They know if they come for your class, you're not going to follow the schedule. And then, or people just awkwardly have to squeeze out of the class and do a little of this. Nice if we can follow the schedule. Yeah, there are great souls who don't. I don't, just do no more than offer them my respects. But I try to follow the schedule. Anything else? Yes, Manji.
Yeah, we have some rules for us. Yes.
Что именно вдохновляет ученика, своих учеников, что вдохновляет своих учеников?
Его учеников. What?
Yes.
What exactly inspires
Oh,
you?
this is one thing also I should talk, you brought up a very important point, thank you. We should learn all about microphones. Most microphones that ISKCON managers purchase are what's called unidirectional microphones. They point in one direction only, and they're the wrong kind of microphone for the purpose. The right microphone is what's called a cardioid mic. It picks up more like a heart shape, but the people who buy the mics don't usually know that, and so you have to speak directly into the mic. And I've seen that at academic, I attended an academic conference, and some respected scholar was speaking, and you could only get like 20% of what he said, because as soon as he was to this part of the mic, it was all yours. And by the second day of the conference, the people in charge had caught on, but it took that long. So if you're in charge by the right mic, if it's too late, then at least know that I'll have to speak directly into the mic, otherwise I'm lost. Also know that where and how the mic is pointing matters. You see a lot of people who have a mic and it's like this. Also, notice that these mic stands all have knobs on them, little handles and knobs. The reason is so that you can loosen the knob or the handle, adjust the position of whatever part of the stand it is, and then tighten the knob again. That's why these expensive stands are there with all these little knobs. And the standard ISKCON way to deal with it is just to go. Which is why most of the mic stands in ISKCON have droopy mic syndrome. So try to deal like an expert with your microphone stands, which just consists of loosening the part you want to adjust, adjusting it, and tightening it again. I could also suggest that you keep your microphone a little lower than your lips and point it up, rather than have it like this, which is visually obstructive. Yes, now to your actual question.
What exactly inspires you in your own disciples?
What inspires me to what?
What inspires you in your disciples?
What inspires my disciples?
What inspires you in your
Yes.
What inspires you in your disciples?
What inspires me in my disciples? You mean what about my disciples inspires me?
Yes.
What is it about my disciples that inspires me?
Какие служения?
What? I don't understand the
Читать
question.
лекцию, что вам вдохновляет вот, служение учеников? Ну, какие служения? Какие служения, да, вдохновляют? То есть каким должен быть ученик, чтобы он, ну, сейчас...
What inspires you? What services that they do inspire you?
I'm sorry, the question is off topic. What it is about me and my disciples and our relationship and inspiration and all of that has nothing to do with anything I'm talking about. And if someone raises an irrelevant question in your class, feel free to say, Maharaja, I'll answer that some other time. Yes.
Krishna? Hare Krishna. So a few technical questions. I've noticed that there's some devotees that don't chant Jayadvaita after chanting Jayadvaita Madhava. Is that like a rule that you have a chant on?
I'm sorry.
Jayadvaita at the end of
Yeah, Prematwani, that's all I heard. What else about
at the
Prema?
end of Jayadvaita Madhava.
Yeah, I heard that.
Do you mean to?
What about it?
So my question is it like is it mandatory that we have to chant?
Prematwani? Prabhupada always did. I meant to mention it in my book, but I didn't. I attended the deity installation at ISKCON Detroit, Radha Kunja Bihari, and there were multiple kirtans. And after each kirtan, Prabhupada chanted Prematwani, and I noted it because it was like, conspicuous how often, how many times he chanted the Prematwani after the kirtan. So that's the general. That's what you do, and that's what Prabhupada. Good. Yes, Rakesh.
Maharaj, while speaking during Bhagavatam class, if we notice some people are dozing off, then this like we crack some jokes, or is this the right mood, or
That's my next topic, actually. The the this is a weighty subject matter. Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahmana Mamalam, the central embodiment of Krishna as in the form of Shastra is Srimad Bhagavatam. Purana Kadunodita. Krishna appears in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's a weighty occasion to teach this important message. So it's not a joke session. It's not for entertainment. It's not for tricks and innovations and amusing things. I remember on Ram Navami one time, I was in a temple here in India, and a well-known devotee gave the class, and he opened up with a joke. And it was a very funny joke. I mean, it was really a good joke. And I thought, well, okay, sort of get the audience a little on board. So and it was a good joke. And then he told another joke. And it was really good too. So, okay, now he scored 2. But then it was another joke. Then another joke, and then a couple of lines of, some thoughts, and then another joke. The whole class was jokes. And I was with a god brother. We were listening, actually, circumstantially, online. Although we were in the same temple, but we were listening online. And after about 20 minutes, we just turned it off. This person, although he's quite a well-known and respected person, said, what is this nonsense? We both had the same response. What is this nonsense? Bhagavatam is not the time to entertain the audience with amusing stories and jokes and one-liners and smart things. It's not to show off. It's not to impress people with our personality or our intellectual capability or anything else. And especially it's not for amusement. It's not for entertainment. Now, that's not to say that you can't tell an amusing story or even tell a joke, Prabhupada did. But it should be incidental to teaching something. It's not just so that people will be with me and they'll stay awake, or they'll like me, or they'll remember me, or they'll ask me to come back. No. Let them fall asleep. But I have to perform my duty. Now, ideally, they shouldn't fall asleep. And if you have substance to give, and you understand what you're speaking about, then you can make it interesting. Prabhupada said, personal realization does not mean that one should, out of vanity, attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous Acharya. One must have full confidence in the previous Acharya, and at the same time, one must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter for the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. in italics. No obscure meaning should be screwed out of it, yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization. If you don't have realization, if you're just parroting, then it will be hard for people to stay awake. But if you've understood the subject matter, and particularly if you have, as Prabhupada did, an earnest desire to get across what's being said, then people should stay awake. There's a book in which a famous public speaker advised that if you're giving a sermon, that if the preacher is giving a sermon and the audience is falling asleep, that someone should take a stick and prod the preacher. Prod the preacher. We should be awake. Get enough sleep, that's the first thing. But we should be enthusiastic about the subject matter. We should talk about what we understand, and we should have a desire to present the thing as it is. It's not that Krishna consciousness is boring, that Srimad Bhagavatam is dull. That is, a Time magazine is more interesting, or politics or sociology has more value, or that I have to present everything in a formula, 5 points about 3 secrets of something that some technique we've read in the book. But just present the subject matter according to your own realization and with life. Prana Chayar Shayadu Prancha, according with life. But not that, well, if the audience is dull, then okay, it's time for a joke. Prabhupada didn't appreciate that. Yes.
So some of us may know that Srila Prabhupada has said that you are expert in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. So how, what would you say about those devotees who speak on Bhagavatam and they only give Leela stories?
They only give.
Stories.
They just speak stories and not the philosophy.
There are different devotees who have different tastes and different styles or different presentations. Some devotees may speak more philosophically, some may speak more about Krishna's activities. And I wouldn't want to say anything about the devotees who speak in different manners. That would be dangerous. But our general, mandate is to present the tattva, the conclusions, and that's our job. People should understand they're not the body, that spiritual life is meant for spiritual Krishna consciousness, that human life is meant for spiritual realization, that this is a world of suffering, that one should surrender to Krishna, that one should chant the Maha Mantra, and many other topics of Siddhanta. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have so many items of Adhyatmic Tattva, spiritual Tattva, that it's our duty to present and even to educate the audience. But that's not to say that we can't speak about Krishna's pastimes, that they're off limits or something like that. Beyond that, I don't think I want to go. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, let me have a few points more, I think. By the way, I'm officially allowed to go past an hour, so. I asked beforehand from the secretary. I didn't even ask, they told me. Looks like I've covered all that. PowerPoint, watch out for PowerPoint. PowerPoint's a real drag. PowerPoint has its place. Most people don't know how to use it. Most people who use it don't know how to use it. They take a slide, they fill it up with text, and they flash it on the screen, and then they talk, they read from the slide, or they talk about what's not on the slide. This is all totally the sign of a person who doesn't know what in the world he's doing in the PowerPoint. He should have his PowerPoint taken away from him. Your slides should not distract from your presentation. If you're going to use slides at all, which I rarely do, but if you want to have a PowerPoint presentation, first of all, be aware that PowerPoint may be a heck of a lot less engaging than a person talking to you face to face. If I were to be, the world's expert on quantum theory or something, I think I'd much rather hear him speak and than just see a PowerPoint presentation with his slides. His slides I can get anywhere. So consider that your PowerPoint presentation may be actually bringing down your connection with the audience. I've seen one respected sannyasi set up this PowerPoint presentation, turn his back to the entire audience, and speak to the presentation. And that too in a dark room. Then we fill our slides up as mentioned, and we read from the slides, and everybody reads. You read the slide in 40 seconds. Everyone else has read it in 10 before you started speaking. PowerPoint presentations are really to make points. The ideal PowerPoint presentation has no words on it at all. It's just a picture that reinforces your point, or it's got 2 or 3 words that drive home your point or set up the audience for what you're going to do, or it's got something that really needs to be illustrated. It doesn't lend itself to verbal description, but when you see it, then you know what it is. For that, PowerPoint may be useful, but as a canned way of giving a class, it's really lousy. It's really 10th class. And I would advise you against using PowerPoint unless you have a reason, a compelling reason to use it. I know, and now it's like standard. You give a pitch for fundraising, it's PowerPoint. You give a class, it's PowerPoint. You present your product, it's PowerPoint. Everything's PowerPoint. And it's just much less effective often than just telling people what you have in mind. There was there's a lady, she's a devotee, she's an attorney, she's working for a nonprofit, sort of social upliftment organization as her job. And her colleagues asked her to make a fundraising pitch, a pitch to some board of directors of an agency that had the power to give money. And they were very used to seeing, the reports and the PowerPoints and all this. And she just went in there and told about what she was doing and what effect it was having, and told stories. They got everything. They didn't care what do we need your PowerPoint. But if you tell a story that's like goes with the heart, or that really is persuasive, that closes the deal. It's so powerful. I don't even like Microsoft. What to speak about? Yes.
I was attending a class recently in which the devotee adjusted the microphone probably 300 times in the class, and it made it impossible to listen to what he was saying. And so I was thinking also in terms of giving class, there's certain nervous tics we have, or in speech, too many ums or too many different things that.
That's where I'm not gonna go into that. I've given a class on, strong speaking and straight thinking, strong speaking. You can look it up somewhere. If you're looking for a good book on speaking, here in India, I picked up a book by Dale Carnegie, who's like my mother's generation or something, or before, and seemed like such a square guy, but it's actually a good book. Public Speaking and Influencing Men in Business. There's an updated or re-edited or something version that takes out half and adds half, but that version was good. And it gives you all this kind of stuff without getting too slick. It's quite a good book. I recommend it if you want such a book. And there are other things, about verbal tics and distracting things people do with their bodies or their hands and adjusting their tie 100 times and all that. I won't talk about that today. This is I've already talked about reciting time, being obsessively relevant. We have to be relevant. We have to be relevant. We have to be relevant. You have to present Srimad Bhagavatam. Maybe relevant or not relevant, according to some mundane point of view, it's always relevant. So, all right, if you're relevant, very bold, but we don't need to obsess over relevance, and particularly not to the point where we need to really know what's going on in the world at every moment so that we can give a relevant, unnecessary, and distracting and not good for us. I understand you're trying to get more lectures at colleges, also in sociology and political classes and philosophy classes. Letters, that's your question. You should not give political or social discussions while speaking of Krishna consciousness philosophy from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. You can simply touch on some socio-political implications. Krishna consciousness is so broad and all-inclusive that naturally when speaking in Krishna consciousness, we get so many opportunities to deal in politics, although that is not our subject matter. To do so requires expert handling. You can take part in such classes and present the subject matter in such a way that it may at first appear like socio-political philosophical affairs, but actually introduce our Krishna consciousness philosophy. That requires tactful handling. You can give it a political, etc. headline, and then end it with our philosophy. Letter 14th November 1968. So the Bhagavatam class is not an opportunity for socio-political discussion. We don't care who gets elected president of the United States or this, that, or the other thing. It's not for pushing a particular political agenda or anything of that nature. Or even that we have to get involved in all of these things, just speak for you. That's the Bhagavatam class. And if you're giving a class in sociology or something, then the hint Prabhupada gives is, you open with a few words about sociology and then you're off and running. We saw Prabhupada do that. Easy Journey to Other Planets. There's like a paragraph and a half or something about what the scientists discovered. And then in the Bhagavad Gita, that's it. And maybe you find a line or two somewhere in the rest of the book about the scientists. They may come back. But he doesn't obsess or focus on them. It's just an opportunity for speaking in the pocket. This Bhagavatam class is not a gripe session. It's not a Rah session. And his purpose is to give us the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Any other questions? Yes.
What is the recipe for realization, Maharaj?
What's the recipe for realization?
As opposed to just remaining like a theoretical copy-paste kind of presenter.
2 teaspoons. That's so. Just Prabhupada one time said, cram the books and express them in your own words. That's the recipe. Yes,
Any suggestions about quoting Shlokas to class?
yes, thank you. Prabhupada recommended, among other things, you want to seem like you really know something. Just quote. Simple thing is, when you quote Sanskrit, it has weight. The transcendental vibration itself has an effect. It helps point you to where you're going. Each word has meaning and suggests more ideas. So you'll see when Prabhupada speaks so much Sanskrit, even though he's speaking to a non-Sanskrit knowing audience. But Prabhupada said, I explained. It's not that he just quotes Sanskrit then leaves you in the dust, but he quotes the Sanskrit and then unpacks the Sanskrit. And that's typically the structure of his class. He quotes something in Sanskrit, unpacks it, goes on to the next piece of Sanskrit. So by all means, you can feel free to follow Prabhupada in that regard of quoting Sanskrit. Yes. And that makes it very, apart from impressing people, which is not our purpose, it carries authority. It transmits authority. So, and it keeps you grounded in authority also. It keeps you where you want to be. So yes, Sanskrit. Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
There was a question about the question was how the speaker should look like.
How the speaker should look like. Handsome. Well, Prabhupada told Giriraj Maharaj, first dress, then undress. So the context there, I think, was that Giriraj Maharaj wasn't very particular about his dress, and Prabhupada sort of requested him to dress nicely, and because you're representing him. Generally, Prabhupada appreciated devotees dressed in dhoti, kurta, tilak, and your standard Vaishnav attire, or what Prabhupada gave us as Vaishnav attire. Vaishnav can dress anyway, but you know what I mean. Your standard saris for the ladies and dhoti kurta for the men. And keep in mind also that if you're going to be presenting this very weighty and serious philosophy, you might not want to be, putting bows in your ears and tattoos on your face and all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't really advance our agenda. One time said that we should dress like in our standard attire or like respectable gentlemen. So like our scientists, they don't have to get up before a scientific body in their dhoti kurta, but they should dress like respectable scientists. We have something very serious to present. So it's not something just sort of goofy or offhanded or vulgar, God forbid. It's serious. We have a serious message to present, so it should be presented seriously. Which doesn't mean that You can have a lighthearted remark here, but it should be a serious subject. The President of the United States, when he gives a serious address to Congress, doesn't tell jokes. Fill the time with one-liners or do things to let everybody know that he's really a good guy and that he's kind of like them, and we're all in the same boat together. We're just friends, and I find it's just so relatable talking to you because blah blah. We don't need all that stuff. Not to say that you can't relate to people, and that if you're socially adept, you can be socially adept. It's fine. Or that we shouldn't check in to see whether people are falling asleep or whether they're listening. But it's not a Kiwanis Club meeting, if you know what Kiwanis Club is. Kiwanis Club is a men's social club of gentlemen, and they have charitable things they do and so on. They have regular meetings and speakers and so on. Toastmasters International. It's not that. We have a message and everything else. All right, if you're a good speaker, wonderful. If you have a good vocabulary, wonderful. If you're a learned scholar, wonderful. If you have a winning personality, wonderful. The main thing is the message. The message counts more than, it's not all, the Bhagavatam class is not all about us. It's about Krishna. Okay. Yes. I don't want to be winding down here, conscious of yours. Yes.
I've seen different places have different standards of who's eligible to give Bhagavatam class. Somewhere they say first initiated, somewhere they second initiated. I've seen what is the Srila Prabhupada standard?
What was Prabhupada's standard to give the class? You have to be first initiated, second initiated. I never heard anything from Prabhupada about that. As far as I'm concerned, you don't have to be initiated at all. If you know the philosophy, and we teach people Krishna Consciousness. Suppose you have a group. You start a group somewhere of people who are interested in Krishna Consciousness, and you have that group meeting once a week. Now you have to make sure there's someone second initiated to be there every Sunday to give the class. Even if if the host can speak something, pass around the book. Speak a few words of what you've understood from the devotees. Lovely. Lovely. I don't know of any rule you have to be first initiated. But you should be, of course, if you're sitting on the asana and so on, following the four regular principles. That's very strongly said. Now, in less formal contexts, I don't know a rule, but and also it's up to the local management. I don't want to sit here and say, I'll tell you what I thought about that thing about the spiritual master. But as far as first initiated, second initiated, dress code, this is at the discretion of the local management, and let's let them have their discretion. I'm not going to sit here and tell them what to do.
What about ladies giving Bhagavatam?
Fantastic. Jai Krishna Tattva Shri. Anyone who knows the science of Krishna, man, lady, child, anyone, Prahlad Maharaj's child, they came up to class and ruined the whole school.
Why many of the Indian temples don't allow that?
Why don't many of the Indian temples, they have their reasons, and I'm not going to get into that. In principle, men can give class, women can give class, anyone can give class. Now, how that applies locally according to the sociology of the country or the discretion of the managers is another question. And it's beyond the sort of basic scope that I'm talking about today. But there's nothing intrinsically wrong with women giving class if they know the science. Yes.
Yes, Maharaj, just an question.
Just to add, I've present sometimes where Prabhupada would have different devotees speak, and he would call on one of his lady disciples. Yes.
Yes, Maharaj. And if Madhis are having that monthly cycle, are they allowed to sit on the Vyasasana and speak?
Again, this is a local management, and traditionally, they're not supposed to be anywhere. They're given some days off.
But for example, in the West.
I'm taking India. I think those who've seen the Mahabharata videos of B.R. Chopra, Pandavas are there, and Dhritarashtra says, "So where is my daughter Draupadi?" And the answer is, "Oh, she'll join us after a couple of days." And Dhritarashtra says, "I'm sure." That's all. Given the days off. That's the tradition. Now, what we do with the tradition after that, I leave that up to those who are in charge of such matters. But that's the tradition. Time off. And then you don't have to go to the kitchen, you don't have to go
Вопрос, если аудитория, это дети, да, каким-то можно хорошо общаться, особенно если там лекция для детей.
If
If the speaker speaks to children, are there any tips on how to speak to children?
Yes, there are tips for speaking to children, but they don't come from me. I have no rapport with children. They don't like me. They run away when they see me. I don't like them either. So next time your Marsh comes, you can ask him these questions. All right, shall we have there? I'll leave you with something. Actually, let's read the Prabhupada. I remember wrote a letter to Satsuru Maharaj one time. And he said that, yes, in the beginning, I also was not very expert, but over some time, you know that much?
Yeah, it's the right practice.
Yeah, he said, by practice, and now it become something. So that's the idea. We may be good speakers, we may be bad speakers. Just Prabhupada said, when there's an emergency, somehow or other, the inmates of the house get the message across, even if they don't speak the same language. So in the same spirit, we have to try to give the message of Bhagavatam. We may be good speakers, not so good speakers, but we have this crucial message to give to people. We have this crucial message to give to people. So we may be good speakers, we may be bad speakers, but at least let us be speakers. Let us speak and try to give people this message of Krishna. And Dadami Buddhi Yoga, Krishna will help. He'll give inspiration, he'll give the expertise. And as Prabhupada said, practice makes perfect. All right. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna, all colleagues to Srila Prabhupada.